In the last video, I was showing the inside of a turn handle detonator used for firing explosives in mines and quarries. And someone was asking, how do the ones with the big wooden handle work? The handle that you push down into the box, like Wile-E-Coyote uses in Roadrunner. And it's something I've often considered myself. I had thoughts that, there might be some sort of magnetic plunger, like a magnet plunging through a coil or something to generate the power, or it might be batteries and it might just push a contact at the bottom. So I went online looking for blasting equipment, as one does, on eBay of course, and I found one for sale. In fact, not just one for sale, there's a few for sale at this point in time. Maybe it was a mass-produced item and ultimately they just keep popping up in the market. So this one is being sold by Napoleon Deals, and they're based in Tupper Lake, New York. I was very tempted to actually buy it because it looks pretty cool, but that's going to be heavy, and the chance of that getting shipped from America to the UK, aside from the cost of shipping, the risk of Royal Mail just actually seizing it and destroying it is too high, so I'm not even going to attempt that. So this unit here, what's interesting about this listing is that they've actually taken the cover off the side and they're showing pictures of what's inside, and that's really interesting because it lets us see how this works. So let's take a look, first of all, at the unit itself. Looks very stylish. It's the box with the rack and pinion. That's a really important bit here. The rack, the fact this metal strip down here has teeth in it. And the label on it says, directions for using a blasting machine. This machine is intended for shooting electric blasting caps connected only in straight series as shown. The reason for that is that if you connected them in parallel, you'd end up with a very, very low resistance and it's quite hard to fire them. So they normally wire them in series, and just by nature of the fact that each has a small sort of heated filament in it, that they all trigger at once. It's kind of rare that one doesn't trigger. And it says, keep this machine in a dry place, keep all connections tight and clean, oil bearings occasionally, use Vaseline on rack bar and gears, clean commutator and brushes with number 00 sandpaper and wipe clean after using, and brushes must be firmly set against commutator. All good clues as to what's inside here. The next picture shows, this is the rack bar coming in, that's the bar with the handle on top of it. And you can see that it's running against this wheel here, which is coupled with a ratchet onto this outer wheel. So they're on the same shaft, but it looks like this one can turn freely in one direction because of this ratchet and sort of pawl mechanism. Initially I was wondering where the spring was, and then it's right next to it. It's this little spiral. So that means as you pull the handle up, this wheel will rotate that way and it will just slip past this ratchet and it won't turn the main wheel. But when you push it down again, the ratchet kicks in and you're driving that wheel around, and then it must be coupling across. There's that wheel over there. It must be coupling across to this generator here, this little dynamo thing, with a small wheel against the large cog coupling across to this. And what that means is as you push it down, you're revving this up. It's quite a high gearing ratio, so this thing here is going to be revved up to quite a high speed. And by the time you reach the bottom of it, the plunger stops against what looks down here like a spring-loaded plate, just to absorb the impact of the plunger, just to stop it smacking into the wood. But it also, just before it hits that, it hits this contact here, and that then probably connects the output, because you've got the high-speed dynamo here, with one connection connected directly to one output, but the other one coming down to the switch and then onto the dynamo, which means that the dynamo is running without a load until it gets to the bottom, and then it just dumps the output across that. I should actually bring this down so you can see that the two connections come through here, one straight to the dynamo and one down to the switch. So that is quite intriguing. Another thing that's interesting to note here is that there's a hole through the side here, and these are the brushes that are going onto the commutator, which connects onto the rotor inside here. And instead of just a wire going up to the top, it's also got another wire going into the, presumably power the stator winding in there, which means that there will be some low-level magnetism in that, but it doesn't need a high-power magnet, and they certainly didn't have high-power magnets then. They didn't have the neodymium iron boron magnets or even ceramic magnets then. It was probably just magnetized chunks of steel. But what happens when that starts running is it will induce a voltage across these two terminals here, and one leg's going in there, one leg's going in there. That will then excite the stator field, and then it will effectively have a multiplying effect, because that will then create a stronger magnetic field, which will create a higher voltage out here, and which will create a stronger magnetic field. And it just means that by the time that you've revved that up to a high speed, you've not only got the high mass, but it should be a fairly high voltage, and that's the point. It just gets dumped across the output. I wonder how many people buy these as novelties and ram the plunger down without realising that very briefly at the end of travel, these will actually potentially come live at quite a high voltage. I'm not sure what the voltage would be. But this also means, I'm just suddenly thinking, there's a, hold on a second, I'm going to grab something. Yeah, this means that when you push the plunger down, it doesn't just go vit, or like it doesn't just slide down easily. It would actually be quite a lot of resistance, and you'd hear a noise like this when it went down. It wouldn't look anything like this bubble blowing fish, which is for another video later on at some point. But that's the noise you'd get. You'd get that high resistance as you pushed it down, and that sort of ramping noise. And if you can't just have the blasting caps connected across that all the time, because if you did, their low resistance means that that would be really hard to push down. You'd be pushing against basically a back EMF load. This would be trying to create voltage and push current out those, but because it was coming straight back, it would actually act like a magnetic brake. So I'm guessing that if you actually rammed this lever down, the plunger down, and there was nothing connected, it'll probably make just like that noise you heard. That'll make this sort of woo. But if you shoved it down into a dead short, you'd get to the bottom, it would really break really sharply. It would just suddenly stop. Or if there was the blasting caps all fired, there'd be an initial pulse that would have a very short braking period, and then there'd be a bit of overrun. So I wonder what voltage comes out of these. I suppose the only way to find that out would be to actually get one and stick a meter across it with a peak detection, and actually see what the sort of, well, open circuit, and maybe with the resistance across it as well. But it's interesting, very interesting how they're made with that, the rack and pinion just being used to ramp this thing up to high speed, and then use this switch down here to just dump it across the output. I do have to say that the switch contacts just don't look quite right. I don't think this one here is an electrical contact. It looks as though that one there should be a bit further away. Oh no, of course no, I'm talking crap, because it is actually pushed into contact with this because the plunger is right down. But yeah, I bet it weighs a ton. I bet it's quite a heavy thing. It's very interesting indeed. So that's how the big Wile-E-Coyote plunger dynamite blasters work.